Coming up on The Disturbance, I've got my big National Football League NFC North preview show for you today. And yes, we are going to talk about the Green Bay Packers, their offensive defections. We'll get into some of their new additions. And of course, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and his off-the-field antics, which includes a lot of golf and what can best be perceived as one of the weakest man buns in the history of man buns. I've got that plus Dan Campbell versus the Chicago Bears. Which of these two teams do you believe is going to be better this year? I'll give you a hint. It's the team that's actually going to be on Hard Knocks. Sorry, Bears fan. And we'll get into the offseason moves, and there were a whole lot of them for my Minnesota Vikings. So we'll do all of that, and trust me, a whole lot more coming up on the big show today.
Live and on tape from the heart of Silicon Valley, this is The Disturbance, hosted by Dave Daba. Now to the host, who can't stop ripping on players, coaches, and unbelievably bad front office management, Dave Daba.
It is super late night on a Thursday, July 21st of the year 2022. I'm Dave Daba, and thanks so much for tuning into The Disturbance today. Now, as I mentioned, we've got a big show for you. We're going to do our big NFC North preview. Before we get into the details of the show, I just have to say one thing. I cannot wait to see Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions on Hard Knocks. That is premiering in just a few weeks. It is going to be must-see TV. This is going to be the TV show in which Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, attempts to turn Jarred Goff into the next quarterback messiah and attempts to brainwash the entire Detroit metropolitan area into believing that Jarred Goff is going to lead him and the Detroit Lions to the promised land. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. But in all seriousness, in the National Football League, when you think about it, there are really only three types of teams, right? You've got the really well-run National Football League teams that always seem to be in the playoffs. You know, maybe they'll miss the playoffs for a year or two, but they'll always seem to be there, and they actually go out and they win some Super Bowls occasionally. I mean, you could even put the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into that conversation because, for God's sakes, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, what sets these top franchises apart from the rest of the National Football League teams is really the ownership group, because the players come and go, the general managers come and go, and so do the coaches. So then you've got your sort of like middle of the road teams, which are occasionally good, occasionally show up in the Super Bowl, and then just a couple years later have to fire their head coach, the Atlanta Falcons, because they're back to being bad. But those ownership groups are also strong. They're strong. They've got strong business leaders. They've got strong management teams, and they tend to make tough decisions when they need to make them, so they don't stay bad forever. Then you have the other franchises in the National Football League that just tend to stay bad for a very, very, very long time. I mean, just take what happened to the Cleveland Browns. They were so bad that the franchise actually decided to move to Baltimore. Just the simple move to Baltimore and the name change and a bit of an ownership group move, and the Baltimore Ravens have actually won some Super Bowls outside of Cleveland. Enter the new Cleveland Browns franchise, and they really haven't done anything, have they, since they went back to Cleveland. We're not going to get into the whole Baker Mayfield years, but it was a huge improvement for the Cleveland Browns, which the year before Baker Mayfield were New York Jets 1-15. I'm just saying. So you've got franchises like the Browns, and I want to loop in the Detroit Lions into this bad franchise story. Now, the team does have a strong owner. Just continually, since its Wayne Fontes years, hasn't been able to do anything really respectable in the National Football League for a very long time. Enter Dan Campbell into the picture, and things are suddenly looking up for everybody in Detroit. Sure, they didn't win more than 5 games last year, but that was a victory for this very bad franchise. So 3 different types of franchises in the National Football League. The Green Bay Packers fall into the Tier 1 of National Football League teams. The Minnesota Vikings tend to sort of fall into that Tier 2 or Tier 1B group, if you will, inside the National Football League. One of the proudest things that you would see in the old Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minnesota was the Minnesota playoff appearance sign. The Vikings made the playoffs so many times throughout my life that they were always adding another year to that historic playoff appearance sign. It was never about winning the Super Bowl in Minnesota. It was just simply about doing well enough to put your number of the year you played on that playoff appearance sign. So they've historically been a pretty good franchise. They've had some down periods, but for the most part have been a good franchise in the National Football League. Take the Chicago Bears now. Now, the Chicago Bears, outside of 1985, what have they really done for anybody in the National Football League? They had one run into a Super Bowl since then along the way, but after that, it's just been sort of middle of the road, bottom, if you will, of the National Football League since the Sweetness era ended and Jim McMahon started putting his shoes back on. Well, that never happened, but Jim McMahon left, and it's sort of been a really downward spiral for this Chicago Bears team. They sort of get better, and then they fall off. They never really become great, and they never really win anything for any extended period of time. These are facts about your NFC North division. They're historic facts. If you just go look it up, it's Green Bay, Minnesota, it's Green Bay, Minnesota, it's Green Bay, Minnesota, sprinkle Chicago, and you never see Detroit winning the division at all, do you? Those are the historic notes of this National Football League franchise, or this National Football League division, I should say. So when you look at the this division as we enter into this season, the question is, is any of that going to change? Well, the Minnesota Vikings made a regime change, if you will, at general manager and their head coach position. As strong of a head coach as Mike Zimmer was, the defense got old, and they didn't do a good job drafting and solidifying replacements in key positions for the Vikings last year or the year before, and that has left them with an even older defense today. Now, the team will address this and has addressed this through the draft. Now, if I take a look at who the Minnesota Vikings picked up in the draft, their first of their first 6 picks in the National Football League draft that just happened a couple months ago, they went defense with their top draft pick being what I think could be the upset rookie player on the defensive side of the ball in the National Football League, and it's Lewis Cine, who goes by the nickname Agent 16, is actually going to wear jersey number 6 for the Minnesota Vikings. Agent 16 just happens to be a story about how his mom gave birth to him when he was 16. And how he went on to have a child of his own when he turned 16. And so he always wore the jersey number 16 to enter the National Football League. It's hard sometimes to get the jersey you want. So he's switched up to 6. He's a hell of a safety, a difference maker in the National Football League. Will Lewis Cine be for the Minnesota Vikings? So I think with their new head coach, Kevin William O'Connell, or as I'm calling him, KWC. KWC is 37 years old at this point. This is really his first head coaching job, and a lot of people in the media are picking this Minnesota Viking team to win this division. I, on the other hand, am skeptical. It is going to have to be something that this Minnesota Viking organization proves to me before I will believe it. If I were throwing money down on who I think is going to win this division, you would have to take the Green Bay Packers. And I'll tell you why. Now, we're not going to get into all of the additions and subtractions on the defensive side of the ball with the Green Bay Packers during the offseason. I will say this, that I think the Packers have done a very good job. I think this defense has been getting better and better over the last couple years, and I don't see that actually slowing down this year. Matt LaFleur, who we know is an offensive head coach, really has this team heading in the right direction on the defensive side of the ball. Now, we all know about the departure that happened when Devante Adams decided to travel to Las Vegas and never leave. Devante Adams is joining his former Fresno State Bulldog quarterback in Las Vegas. You know, like when you think of what school a quarterback who plays for the Las Vegas Raiders should come from, you want to see a school like the Fresno State Bulldogs. So Derek Carr reunited with Devante Adams, and that is, let's face it, going to hurt Aaron Rodgers in a tremendous way in this upcoming season. There is, help on the way for Aaron Rodgers with respect to that. They've made a couple good picks with Christian Watson being their wide receiver that they went and picked up. But the real story here is Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who I think are the two the best tandem running backs in the NFC North. I'm not going to say in the National Football League just yet, but in the NFC North. To me, the key here is if A.J. Dillon can stay healthy, man, he is a load to take down, and there are not a lot of defenses that are going to be able to slow him down. So as Christian Watson, the rookie wide receiver, gets up to speed and gains a little bit of trust from Aaron Rodgers, at least Allen Lazard is coming back. They're paying him less than $4 million a year. I don't understand some of the other wide receiver moves that they've made, but this is Aaron Rodgers. He could basically find anybody open anywhere in the country. To be honest, Aaron Rodgers is that good of a quarterback. Single-handedly, I think the smoothest, most accurate quarterback I've ever seen play in the National Football League. That doesn't mean I think he's the best quarterback of all time. That doesn't mean I think he's the most clutch quarterback or even one of the top 5 clutch quarterbacks entering into this National Football League season. It just means he's very accurate, which is something that will help him out and this team tremendously during the regular season. I mean, how else can you explain what has happened to the Green Bay Packers the last couple of years once they've hit the playoffs? Like, like in the NBA, the regular season is sometimes completely different than what happens in playoff football. So Randall Cobb is his lifeline. So it's his Dancing with the Stars lifeline as I combine reality television shows together in a single reference. That being said, Randall Cobb, $4.1 million. to keep Aaron Rodgers happy. And let me just say, that's really all that is. If you think about your car, if you're still driving a gas combustion vehicle and you go to fill it up, Randall Cobb has about a quarter left in his tank, and that's it. So if Randall Cobb plays in half of the games this year, it will be a victory for him and the Green Bay Packers. They did also pick up Sammy Watkins as well, which I've always thought is a nice to have. Can get you maybe 50 to 60 catches a year. And the good news about Sammy Watkins, and the one thing that Aaron Rodgers will absolutely love, is he does run good patterns in the National Football League and has done that throughout his career. He might not burn you deep the way he used to be able to do it, but he'll certainly run some great patterns across the middle, and is not afraid to go across the middle as well. So I think the Packers win the division. Probably maybe they go 12-5. The Vikings probably will scare them at some point during this upcoming National Football League season, and it might even look like they're going to win the division. I think, best case scenario for rookie head coach in the National Football League with an aging defense. Yeah, Anthony Barr has not come back to the Minnesota Vikings at the time we're recording this podcast. So not really sure what's going to happen there. Now, they brought up in a new defensive coordinator, the Vikings, Ed Donatello. They are going to run a 3-4 defense. And in an interview that the new defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings gave Ed Donatello, who's been, coaching, for a long time. Let's just say he's in his 60s, but he's a young 65. Anyways, he said, and a quote, paraphrasing a quote here, we're gonna play the 3-4 defense, but occasionally we're gonna switch to the 4-3. And then he went on to clarify that their defense is going to be adaptable. So which is it, Ed? Are you playing the 3-4? Are you playing the 4-3? Or are you playing some sort of hybrid? Like, whatever they end up playing, he is a fantastic defensive coordinator and has done a great job in the past, most recently with the Denver Broncos. And we know how good that Denver Bronco defense is. So I think the Vikings finish about 11-6 this year, maybe 10-5, but do end their playoff streak and back up in the playoffs this year. Once again, I just think, even with Aaron Rodgers playing all that golf and the man bun and all the other antics and activities that happen in and around Aaron Rodgers, I think this team, if everybody can stay healthy, will win the division. Now for the puppy dogs in the division. Dan Campbell, he has that entire region just absolutely excited. I mean, everybody in that area is so excited and so fired up. I've never seen a city and an area and a state and to some degree a region react to the way they're reacting to Dan Campbell. I mean, they were bad last year. They were really bad last year, and then they got better. And then there was a little bit of something people call hope that seeped in towards the end of the season. And you could see that this Detroit Lions team was getting better, and the players had absolutely bought into what Dan Campbell was selling. This will be the year, though. Dan Campbell, whatever Dan Campbell sells, will have to be purchased by these players. If not, it's going to be another 2 or 3 years before we see another head coach come in and try something different with this Detroit Lions organization. Now, we all know that they had they made some excellent picks in their draft this year. They picked up DeAndre. Well, let's see. On the defensive side of the ball, they made some great moves, and so it's just going to be an interesting thing that happens with this Detroit Lions team in Detroit. Will they find a way to get Aiden Hutchinson up off the ground at the level they really want to get him going? Will Aiden actually be able to handle the speed of the National Football League is the big question I have. But I mean, like, they were so excited to bring their Michigan player back to Michigan that they had that thing written down weeks before they had to hand it into the people at the National Football League draft. Let's just say that ink had been dry for quite some time that they were going to take Aiden Hutchinson with that pick. They went on to make some great moves. Not really sure why the Vikings helped them do that, but they did. And they also picked up really what I think is one of the premier wide receivers to come out of this draft. Now, this last couple of years, there's been a lot of great wide receivers that have entered into the National Football League. I don't think you always have to get the top wide receiver in a draft class to be successful. But Jameson Williams is special. He is very special. And you just, you hate to see a guy like that go down and get injured. We don't have an official timetable yet on when he's going to be available and when he's going to be coming back. What I will say that Jarred Goff wasn't as bad as you think last year, and I'm going to prove it to you. So I'm going to pull up, for those of you watching this on video, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Jarred Goff's completion percentage from last season, 67.2%. That actually is the highest of Jarred Goff's career. He threw for, 3,200 yards. He didn't play in all the games because he got hurt. He had 19 TDs, which is nice, and he had 8 interceptions and a rating of 91.5. Not his best statistical season across the board, but you have to sort of take into account what he was dealing with this Detroit Lions team last year. I hear a lot of people talking and ripping on Jarred Goff and almost putting him into the Sam Darnold category, which I just think is wrong. I think Jarred Goff is going to have a long career in the National Football League. I think this is a key season for Jarred Goff, but I don't think that the Detroit Lions really need another quarterback right now, do they? Hopefully Jimmy Garoppolo just didn't get traded to the Detroit Lions, and that will just blow up this video and podcast entirely. But I would say that Jarred Goff is a real quarterback in the National Football League. He's a guy that does put in the time. He does put in the effort. He is trying to improve. He makes better decisions, it seems, as the years have gone on. He's not Matthew Stafford. Let's be fair. But he's a middle-of-the-road quarterback, slightly better than most of the middle-of-the-road quarterbacks. And if you're a team like the Detroit Lions, you need all those other pieces before you need that piece to be replaced. And you might as well work with Jarred Goff, who's still pretty young in his career. He's been in the league now for 6 years. I think this is his 7th year hitting the National Football League. And I think this is the next 5 years are Jarred Goff's prime in the National Football League. He's a bit of a leader. I don't think people around the National Football League and observers inside the media are giving Jarred Goff enough credit. He had a sneaky, decent season last year with the Detroit Lions. Now, Justin Fields, on the other hand, in Chicago, did not have a sneaky good season in his National Football League debut. That doesn't mean he's not confident. That doesn't mean he's not walking around Chicago as if he's already won the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean anything. Now, I know Justin Fields has put in a lot of hard work in the offseason, some very interesting pictures that got released on that. So he is, at least on paper, appears to be putting in the work in this season. But let's just face it, and let's be honest about the Chicago Bears as they enter this season. They've had to make some changes. They don't have a ton of people to talk about on the offensive side of the ball, and there's very little to say about this team on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they are the one team that I can think of that has decided to actually go against and buck the trend in the National Football League. Like the Minnesota Timberwolves in basketball made the big trade for Rudy Gobert because they want to play defense when everybody else wants to shoot threes, even at historically bad percentages. In the National Football League, the trend has been to move with, an offensive-minded head coach, bring him in and have him be your leader of the entire team, and then you bring in a really strong defensive coordinator. The Vikings just shifted from Mike Zimmer, who's a defensive coordinator who was their head coach for a long time and did a nice job, by the way, to an offensive-minded head coach. Chicago's like, no. It's like they're watching black and white television still in Chicago. They have like bunny ears on their TVs in their headquarters, and they decided to go with a defensive guy. And so that's what they did in Matt Eberflus, who came to fame, if you will, with the Indianapolis Colts. Because when you think defense, you think Indianapolis Colts, don't you, Chicago? So apparently the Chicago Bears were impressed. So what I will say about this is, look, defense is very important in the National Football League, as we all know. I believe defense does really help you win championships. You can't do it without it. You can't just throw Patrick Mahomes out there with a bunch of wide receivers and expect him to, carry a team for the entire season. You've got to improve the defense. You have to play good defense. So I was impressed with what he did, all joking aside, with the Colts, which had like the lowest payroll on the defensive side of the ball. So this is a guy that I believe is going to be able to utilize his players, regardless of if they're in a 4-3 or 3-4. He'll be running adaptable defenses as well in Chicago. They will find a way to play good defense in Chicago, as they usually do. I'm just not sold on Justin Fields. I was 12 months ago. I'm not today. This is sophomore season for Justin Fields is going to be the season that we are going to see who the real Justin Fields is. And I don't believe that he's going to show up. I think there's going to be a couple games there where the Chicago Bears fans are going to get excited. It is a great stadium at Soldier Field. The Chicago Bears fans are great and passionate, but I really don't see enough offensive weapons. I don't think they've made enough moves on the offensive line, and I'm not really sure that they have the strategy in place yet to utilize a quarterback like a Justin Fields. I would feel differently about Justin Fields as a quarterback if he was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. That is, if the Kansas City Chiefs didn't have a Patrick Mahomes in front of him. I would feel differently if he was playing for Sean McVay. I would feel differently about it if he was playing for an offensive-minded head coach. And that's a concern that I have with this Chicago Bears team. So the Detroit Lions are going to finish third and are going to sneak in. We'll probably get to between 7 and 9 wins this year, which means they have the potential to actually have a winning record. As for the Chicago Bears, I'm really not predicting anything beyond 5, maybe 6 wins, probably closer to 5, though, for this particular Chicago Bears team. And then I think it's going to turn into a very interesting world in which they are looking for an alternative at quarterback. Look, I'm not rooting against Justin Fields. I want to see him succeed. Just not sure he's in the best position to succeed. He's in the best system in the world to succeed with this particular Chicago Bears regime. All right, that is it for your big NFC North preview. And to all my Viking friends and fans out there, yes, I'm wearing the Vikings hat, but I had to be objective on this. Look, I love this. I love Justin Jefferson as much as you do. I love Adam Thielen as much as you do, but I feel a hamstring pull coming on as I'm standing doing today's podcast, if you know what I mean. Same thing with Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, as great as Alexander Hamilton is for the Minnesota Vikings. It's hard for me to see that they have enough depth in all of their positions to handle all of the upcoming injuries that they most certainly will have. Not wishing injury on anybody, but like Randall Cobb, not a lot left in the Adam Thielen tank to get you through an entire National Football League season. Same can be said with the Dalvin Cook as well. What wins championships, what gets you to the playoffs in the National Football League, what allows you to win divisions is either staying 100% or 90% healthy, or it's really strong depth. And I'm not sure yet how deep this Minnesota Viking team is at both wide receiver and running back. But Justin Jefferson's great, and we all know that. And can't wait to see what William O'Connell can do as the Vikings' new head coach. He is only the 10th head coach in the history of the Minnesota Vikings, KWO. All right, that is it for the Disturbance. I hope you're all like me and going to be tuning into Hard Knocks when that comes out in the next 2 weeks. For the Disturbance, I'm Dave DeBach, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.
The Disturbance is brought to you live and on tape from the heart of the Silicon Valley and is a production of the Mighty Rip Podcast Network. For more witty, 100% independent NFL and NBA sports coverage, check out our big sports website at disturbance.live.